Success doesn't begin with action, it begins with awareness, a deep, quiet awareness of why you're here. Not in a general, vague sense, but in a profoundly personal way. That's what purpose is, not a career title, not a to do list, but an inner flame, something that stays lit even when everything else around you feels like it's falling apart. You see, we live in a world that teaches us how to make a living, but rarely how to build a life. It teaches us what to chase money, status, applause, but not what to stand for. That's why so many people, even after achieving so called success, still feel deeply unfulfilled. Because the ladder they climbed was leaning against the wrong wall. Psychologically, having a sense of purpose is more than motivational fluff. It actually changes the way the brain handles stress and adversity. People with a clear sense of why they wake up each day tend to be more resilient. They recover faster from setbacks. They remain emotionally grounded during chaos. Why? Because their identity isn't defined by their circumstances, it's anchored in their calling. But let's be honest, finding your purpose isn't always a lightning bolt. For most people, it's more like a quiet whisper. It starts with discomfort, a restlessness, a knowing that what you're doing isn't aligned with who you are. And that discomfort, it's not a problem. It's an invitation to turn inward and ask the hard question, why am I really here? Peter, when Muniba Mazari's life changed after her accident, she had every reason to give up. Her body was broken. Her dreams were shattered, but something within her refused to dim, and that something was purpose. Not a perfect plan, but a powerful decision to turn her pain into a platform, to speak when silence was easier, to lift others even while rebuilding herself. That is purpose. It doesn't need certainty, it needs courage. And here's the paradox: purpose doesn't protect you from struggle, it actually guarantees it. Um, because once you know what matters most, everything that doesn't will start to fall away. People might misunderstand you. Opportunities might pass you by. Comfort might become a luxury. But what you gain is clarity. And that clarity gives you fuel no setback can extinguish. Philosophically, purpose is the bridge between existence and meaning. It's what turns breathing into living. Without it, even the most exciting moments feel empty. With it, even the most ordinary days carry deep significance. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and renowned psychiatrist, wrote, "Those who have your why to live can bear almost any." How that statement isn't poetic. It's powerful because it reflects what makes us human, the need for meaning. So, how do you find your purpose? You start by noticing what breaks your heart and what heals it. You pay attention to the moments where you lose track of time because you're so immersed in something that matters. You listen to the part of you that resists conformity, that doesn't just want to fit in, but wants to stand for something. Purpose is not about ego. It's about impact. It's about asking, who benefits from me being alive and awake? And your purpose doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be global, but it does have to be real, honest, aligned. When it is, you become unstoppable, not because life gets easier, but because you stop needing it to. And remember this: purpose evolves. What drives you today may shift tomorrow. That doesn't mean you're lost, it means you're growing. Stay curious, stay open. Don't wait for a grand moment of revelation. Purpose reveals itself through action, through service, through trying, failing, learning, and trying again. If you feel lost, that's okay. You don't find purpose like you find your keys. You uncover it, layer by layer, experience by experience. And the most powerful way to begin? Ask better questions. Not what job should I do, but what kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? Not what makes me successful, but what makes me feel alive. Because at the end of the day, success without purpose is just performance. It's noise. But success rooted in purpose, that's music. That's when life stops being a race and becomes a rhythm. So I ask you now, not as a challenge, but as a quiet reminder, Tree, then what sets your soul on fire? And what would happen if you stopped waiting and started living from that place right now? And let's talk about the kind of fuel that doesn't burn fast and fade quickly, but burns slow, steady, and strong. The kind of fuel that keeps going when excitement is gone, when the crowd is silent, and when no one is watching. That fuel is discipline. Discipline is not glamorous. It's not what people post about on their highlight reels. It's quiet. It's often invisible. It's the early mornings, the small repeated efforts, the uncomfortable choices made in silence. But make no mistake, discipline is the true engine of success. Purpose may be the ignition, but discipline is what keeps the vehicle moving forward. We live in a world that glorifies passion and spontaneity. We are told to follow our heart, to do what feels right. And there is value in inspiration. It's beautiful, even necessary. But here's the truth: inspiration is a spark. It can light the fire, but it cannot sustain it. What keeps the fire burning is the daily decision to show up, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, especially when it's boring. Psychologically speaking, discipline is the capacity to delay gratification, to prioritize long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. And that is not something we are naturally wired for. The brain craves ease, it wants familiarity. It seeks out dopamine, the quick hit of pleasure. That's why scrolling feels easier than writing, why talking feels easier than acting, why dreaming feels safer than building. But discipline, real discipline, is the ability to interrupt that default wiring. It's the conscious override. It's saying, I will do what needs to be done, not just what I feel like doing. That single shift in mindset changes everything, because talent is common, potential is everywhere. But discipline? That's rare. And it's the difference between those who want it and those who mummers become it. Muniba Mazari once said, when you accept yourself the way you are, the world recognizes you. But that self-acceptance does not mean complacency. It means owning your reality and still choosing to rise. Every single day, she disciplines herself to show up with grace, with strength, with truth, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. That's the kind of strength discipline cultivates: quiet, consistent, deeply rooted. And here's what most people get wrong: discipline isn't about rigidity. It's not about punishing yourself into performance. True discipline is born from love, not force. You discipline your body because you respect its potential. You discipline your mind because you know clarity isn't automatic. It must be maintained. You discipline your habits not because you hate your life, but because you love the person you are becoming. Philosophers like Aristotle understood this deeply. He didn't define excellence as a single act. He said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. That insight, thousands of years old, still holds. Your life is not the result of one massive decision. It is the sum of small decisions repeated consistently over time. The magic is not in the intensity. It's in the repetition. Now, this doesn't mean every day looks the same. Life has seasons. There are times for pushing hard and times for resting. But discipline gives you the wisdom to discern the difference, to rest when needed, not when you're just bored or distracted. To keep going when your emotions try to convince you otherwise. And discipline is not just about it's about not doing the diets too. It's about saying no to distractions. No to excuses. No to anything that pulls you away from your deeper values. Every no is also a yes to what matters most. And the more you say yes to your priorities, the more momentum you build. It's not immediate, it's slow, but it compounds. Like interest in a bank account, discipline grows. And one day, when people call you lucky or gifted, you'll know the truth. It wasn't luck, it was daily commitment. If you've ever looked at someone successful and thought, I wish I had their drive, remember this: they didn't wake up motivated every day. They just didn't wait for motivation to act. That's the difference. They built systems, not just dreams. And they honored those systems, especially on the hard days. So ask yourself, what are you committed to, even when it's not convenient? What actions will you take today that your future self will thank you for? Because the future is not shaped by how we feel. It's shaped by what we may do a Maya star dot by stars repeatedly. And if you truly want to be successful, not just once, but sustainably, discipline cannot be optional. It must be non negotiable, because in the end, motivation may get you started, but only discipline will get you there. And here's the part worth remembering: the life you want is already possible. You just have to become the person who can live it, one disciplined day at a time. There's something no one tells you when you begin the journey towards success. They don't mention that even with the clearest purpose and the strongest discipline, things still won't go as planned. Life will interrupt you, circumstances will shift. What once made perfect sense might stop working. And in those moments, your ability to adapt, not your original plan, will determine whether you grow or stay stuck. Adaptability isn't about weakness or compromise. It's not about giving up. It's about evolving. It's about the willingness to rethink, to reshape, and sometimes to start again without losing sight of who you are becoming. And that in itself is a quiet kind of strength. It takes courage to pivot when you've already invested your heart into a certain direction. But what's even more courageous is realizing that staying rigid for the dot, sake of pride, can cost you more than changing course ever will. Philosophically, adaptability is rooted in humility, the awareness that we don't control everything, that the world is dynamic, not static, that truth unfolds in layers, and our understanding, no matter how deep, is always incomplete. The ego wants certainty, predictability, and control, but growth asks us to surrender to something less comfortable, the unknown. And that surrender is where transformation begins. Psychologically, resistance to change is natural. The brain is built to favor safety, routine, the familiar. Even if our current path isn't fulfilling, it feels known, and the known feels safe. But success doesn't come from safety. It comes from movement. Adaptability is what allows us to keep moving even when the terrain shifts beneath us. It's the skill of recalibrating without collapsing. Muniba Mazari embodies this beautifully. After her spinal injury, she didn't just adapt to a new body. She adapted to a new identity, a new voice, a new role in the world. And she did it with grace, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Her life didn't follow the script she imagined. But because she embraced what came instead of resisting it, she created something even more powerful. That is what adaptability makes possible, not just survival, but redefinition. So think about it. How many times have we held on to a plan simply because we didn't want to admit it no longer served us? We romanticize resilience as pushing through no matter what. But real resilience sometimes looks like letting go, saying, this isn't working anymore, and choosing to pivot, not out of failure, but out of wisdom. You see, growth is not about clinging, it's about aligning. When your methods no longer match your purpose, it's time to change the method, not abandon the mission. This is where many people get stuck. They confuse consistency with stubbornness, they confuse discipline with denial. But true growth requires discernment, the ability to recognize when it's time to stay the course and when it's time to evolve. There's a deep psychological freedom that comes when we stop resisting change, not passively accepting it, but actively engaging with it, asking, what is life trying to teach me here? What version of me is this challenge trying to shape? That shift from victim of change to student of change is where your real power begins. Adaptability is also the birthplace of creativity. It's where innovation lives. Some of the most brilliant breakthroughs, whether in science, business, art, or personal transformation, were born not from perfect plans, but from failure, detours, and unexpected turns. The people who achieve meaningful success aren't just the most talented or disciplined, they are the most open. Open to learning, open to evolving, open to becoming more than they once imagined possible. And in a world that is constantly shifting, economically, technologically, culturally, adaptability is not a soft skill, it's a survival skill. Rigid structures break under pressure, flexible ones bend and endure. Your mind must be the same, not weak, not uncertain, but fluid, curious, willing to learn and unlearn as needed. I'm not asking you to abandon your goals. I'm asking you to hold them with open hands, to trust your direction, but be willing to redraw the map. Because the destination may be the same, but the road will never look exactly how you pictured it. And that's not a flaw in the journey, that eases the journey. So if you're facing detours right now, if your path feels unfamiliar or uncertain, I invite you to stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? Because sometimes life isn't closing a door. It's just pointing you toward a different one. Adaptability is not about changing who you are. It's about becoming more of who you're meant to be. And when you embrace change, not with fear but with faith, you don't just move forward, you rise. There's a kind of fuel that doesn't come from within, not directly, at least. It comes from connection, from being seen, understood. It comes from others walking beside you, holding space for your growth, reminding you of your strength when you forget it yourself. This is the power of community, and it is perhaps the most underestimated driver of lasting success. We live in a culture that glorifies individual achievement, the lone hero, the self-made story. But look closer and you'll find that no one does it alone. Behind every seemingly solo success is a constellation of influence, mentors who gave guidance, friends who spoke hard truths, strangers whose kindness became a turning point. Isolation might be seductive because it gives the illusion of control, but it is connection that provides resilience. Psychologically, we are wired for belonging. The brain interprets social rejection as physical pain. We need to feel part of something larger than ourselves, not just for emotional comfort, but for cognitive clarity. When we are deeply connected to others, our capacity to regulate stress, to problem solve, to stay hopeful, it all expands. Community isn't just support, it's perspective. It holds up a mirror and helps us see ourselves more clearly. But not all community is nourishing. That's important to say. Success doesn't just require connection, it requires conscious connection. Being around people who reflect your values, who challenge you with love, who are not intimidated by your growth, but inspired by it. The wrong company can drain you, distract you, even distort your self-image. The right company, it energizes your purpose. It becomes part of your fuel. So, Muniba Mazari often speaks of how her journey was shaped by both the people who believed in her and those who doubted her, and both, in their own way, served a purpose. But what truly sustained her, what lifted her beyond survival and into contribution, was the presence of voices that echoed her strength back to her. People who didn't see her as broken, but as brilliant. That is the kind of community we all need, one that doesn't just hold space for our healing, but pushes us gently. And this goes deeper than encouragement. It's about accountability. True community doesn't just cheer for you, it calls you out, it keeps you aligned. It reminds you when you're playing small, when you're avoiding growth, when you're letting fear write your script. It says, Azia, I see more in you, and I won't let you forget it. Malai, that kind of love is fierce. It's honest. And it's essential philosophically. Community is where the self meets the collective. It's the realization that your journey is not just about you, it's about the ripple effect you create. When you rise, others are lifted. When you speak truth, others find language for their own. And when you surround yourself with those who are also committed to evolving, you create an upward spiral, each person's courage igniting the next. But here's something people often misunderstand. Community is not something you find, it's something you build. It doesn't always show up ready made. Sometimes you have to create it by being the kind of person you want to attract, vulnerable, accountable, willing to give as much as you hope to receive. Because community is a reflection. You get back what you invest. And often, what begins as a shared struggle becomes a shared strength. So ask yourself, who are the people you let speak into your life? Are they expanding you or limiting you? Are they asking you to shrink to stay comfortable, or are they helping you stretch into your potential? And perhaps more importantly, who are you being for the people around you? There's a beautiful paradox here. The more you lean on others in the right way, the more self-reliant you become. Not because you don't need people, but because their presence gives you strength to stand taller. This isn't dependence, it's interdependence. The recognition that we are stronger not in spite of each other, but because of each other. Even in solitude, community is never far. Sometimes it's the voice of a writer echoing your unspoken thoughts. Sometimes it's a memory of a friend's wisdom at the right time. Sometimes it's simply the awareness that someone out there right now is fighting a similar battle and still showing up. That awareness, subtle as it may be, can keep your fire lit. So, no matter how ambitious your goals, remember this: success is not just about reaching the top, it's about who walks beside you, who you lift along the way, and the kind of community you create through your presence. Your greatest strength might not come from within, it might come from those who remind you what's already there. Surround yourself with truth tellers, light bringers, and soul stretchers. Fuel each other, rise together. And never forget, the journey is yours, but it was never meant to be walked alone.